Okay, looks like maybe now you can hear me. Yes? Okay, good, good. We're having a couple technical difficulties there. Welcome everybody this evening. We are holding the 49th District second virtual town hall. You had one last year. And so here we have Senator Annette Cleveland and Representatives Monica Stonier and Sharon Wylie from America's Vancouver. And I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your committee assignment.
Thank you very much, Lilia. Good evening. I'm your state senator, Annette Cleveland, and thank you for joining us tonight. This has been a session like no other, off to a very intense start. And I'm pleased this year to continue on as chair of the Senate Healthcare Committee. I also serve on the Senate Transportation Committee, the Rules Committee, and new this year, I've joined the Housing and Local Government Committee in the Senate. Very much looking forward to the work ahead there. As you all know, we've come into session in the midst of a public health crisis, and we are very much focused on continuing our state response to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as working to help spur economic recovery and address the ongoing issues around racial injustice. So those are the focuses for us this session, and very pleased to be joined by my seatmates here tonight.
I'm Sharon Wylie, and I am very glad to be here tonight, too. Some things are the same, and some things are so different, it's hard to get used to. As Vice Chair of Transportation, I've been spending a huge amount of time since our last session talking to stakeholders throughout the state. We know that a capital project effort is going to be necessary to get everybody back to work as we move out of the recession. We've had 90 meetings talking just about transportation with people all over the state. And we are ready. This week we released the House Democratic proposal. The governor has released his. There will be one from the Senate, and then the negotiations will start. Our I-5 bridge is part of that at this point, and I expect it to stay there. But there's so much more that needs to be done. We have some big projects on our list, and we have a big backlog of maintenance and preservation. These are jobs, and we intend to move forward with that while still getting us to a point where people can be healthy, where we can get our kids back to school, and we can get back to a new normal that will carry us forward.
Well, I'm just as pleased to be here this evening, and very grateful for the opportunity to truly engage with our constituents in a way that seems a little bit different, but we've actually grown quite used to online communications, and I suspect that we will do some of this so that we can stay better connected with constituents in the future when we are actually in Olympia and constituents are actually at home. You might take a page from the educational book and learn from this opportunity. So I'm Representative Monica Stonier. I joined my two seatmates here in gratitude for the feedback that constituents have offered us as we came to the session with your guidance and feedback, and we look forward to that in the future. I'm serving on the Education Committee as I have in the past, and Healthcare Committee as I have in the past, but this year added to my list of high content, high volume committees is the Appropriations Committee. So I'm a bit busy working to assess kind of what our priorities are for this session, along with the committee chairs in both the House and the Senate, to see what we can get managed in our budget and moved out. Also paying very close attention to vaccine deployment to ensure that the troubles that we've had and the ripples that we've had in that process get cleaned up. It's not very often that anywhere in the world we're deploying vaccines as quickly as we're trying to do now. So obviously there are going to be some challenges, and we hope to see some improvement very soon. In fact, this week, there is a site here in Clark County that is going to help with that effort. And then finally, I'm working toward ensuring that kids and educators have a safe return to school as one of the major steps back to normalcy. But of course, we want to make sure that we do that in a way that is safe And as floor leader, I'm working on trying to make sure that we actually can do the work of the legislature. We have had a very successful 2 weeks. Hearings have gone smoothly. Every once in a while, there's a ledge tech request, and that means our tech support has to come help us solve a problem. And the bills that we've been working to pass on the floor are ready to go. So again, while there may be some ripples because of this unique scenario, we are able to do the work of the people. We are able to do it safely, and we will continue to do so. Looking forward to questions from our constituents tonight.
All right, thank you. So when we sent out the invite, there was a link for people to submit questions. So that's one way that we receive questions. Another way is in the comment section of this live event. You are welcome to post your question there. And of course, you can email any of the legislators' offices with your questions if you want. So the first question we are going to respond today came through email, and it is, what are you doing to address the pandemic? Specific bills, UI assistance, eviction, protections, and anyway, what are you doing?
Thank you for the question. And as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has touched virtually every corner of the state, every sector. And we fully recognize that people are struggling. They need relief, they need help. We have to prepare for what we know will be very much increased need, not just for economic help, but for additional health care, for mental health services, for help with housing, food. The list is endless, but where we have chosen in the Senate to put our time and attention is first on early action funding bill that will help address some of those very things I just listed, as well as also legislation to continue to support our response as a state to COVID. Obviously, some of the immediate need is to ensure that we can get vaccines into the arms of citizens in this state, that we can continue to support needed contact tracing and testing. In the Senate Healthcare Committee, I put forward a number of bills that were heard yesterday that will help to streamline pandemic response and also help to put more resources in place for people to access personal protective equipment, which we know has been one of the great challenges among so many that we faced during this pandemic. So I think I would answer the question by saying, what aren't we doing? We are working very, very hard to come forward with a comprehensive approach that supports the bill that we passed at the end of session in 2020, when we recognized that this pandemic was becoming a crisis, and we appropriated funds at that time for response. So we're going to continue to do all we can to push out what we know is needed relief for each and everyone who need it.
And I can add a little contour. We will, of course, be working on the regular budget process for the state, but ahead of that, as the senator just mentioned, early action bills will move quickly through both chambers and get to the governor's desk so that we can be sure to deploy funds as soon as we possibly can. I was just in appropriations right before this and got here a minute or two late, partly because we were hearing two bills that will be over to the Senate with much attention to get money to schools in order to make sure that they are prepared to cover the costs that they have lost due to a lack of enrollment from people staying home. Small business relief is included and support to our local public health jurisdictions to get the work done that the senator just listed. So we're working to try and get those bills out early next week so that the Senate has an opportunity to respond and to get it to the governor's desk before mid-February. And so we're really working to try and make sure that all those items are done in a way that is responsive to the timeline people have currently. We do have other policy bills related. We want to ensure that people have time to get back on their feet. We have some tenant protections right now so that people cannot be evicted from their homes in the middle of a pandemic, but that is reliant on the governor's proclamation. So we want to try and make sure that we put something in place to allow some time for people to get back on their feet as we come out of the economic downturn. And so you'll see a number of policies related to that as well.
All right, thank you. We have another question that came in through email earlier today, and all three of you are very much looking forward to answering this, I am sure. Will we get a new I-5 bridge before our old bridges fall down?
Well, I'll take that one. We've spent a huge amount of time over about the last 6 or 7 years now to make sure that we can get a new bridge, and the efforts of a lot of people are coming together. There will be a lot more coming out to the public, and as long as we don't have the big earthquake before we get done, I'm confident that we're not wasting our time and we're not wasting the work that was done before. We have committees to represent the communities. We have a new website that will give people a way to follow all the efforts that are going on and to weigh in, because we want there to be a huge amount of public support when we get to that point. And so I'm very optimistic, or I wouldn't be working on them.
Okay, our next question that also came in through email is for Senator Cleveland. And the question is, what is happening with Senate Bill 5204?
Well, thank you for that question, and I'm happy to provide you with a progress report. Senate Bill 5204 is one of the several bills that are being put forward this legislative session that pertain to universal health care and single-payer health care. And I want to share that, even in the midst of this pandemic and the ongoing public health emergency, continued focus on advancing single-payer discussion in our state has occurred. And the Universal Healthcare Work Group that was directed in our 2019 budget has been hard at work, and that work group issued a report this January 15th, and I would welcome and urge all of you to take a look at that report. There were a number of different scenarios outlined in that report. In addition to that, I want to remind you that in 2019, as a state, we were the very first in the nation to pass a public option healthcare coverage that is more affordable, and it's our first government-sponsored insurance coverage in the United States. And so implementation of that public option has gone on, and this year is the first year in 2021 that plans are being offered on our health benefit exchange for the public option. And honestly, this couldn't have come at a better time, given that we're in the midst of this pandemic, and we know that there are those who've lost their jobs and with it their health care. So as this piece, the public option has been implemented, we're now discussing how to advance a premium subsidy program in the state to help people with the cost of their health care coverage. And that's the next step as we continue driving toward universal health coverage. Also, want to mention that we're preparing for that longer term goal and vision. I've been working with Senator Emily Randall on putting forward a policy that's based on the work of the Universal Healthcare Work Group, and hope to plan to schedule that bill for hearing in the healthcare committee as soon as it's introduced. Now, our state has continued to lead on this effort, and I'm proud of that, and I intend for that to continue. But I want to also share that, as I have with you in the past, that there are some very big questions and very big challenges around this that we have to work together to answer. Over 50% of our citizens have health care through their employers. We need to carefully plan and address what should be done about these private insurance plans as we continue the discussion around single payer. We need to particularly determine the impacts to our unions, our union members, those who've collectively bargained for their health care and gave up other benefits to ensure that they had strong health care coverage. So how do we make sure that they don't lose the robust health care coverage that they have worked very hard for? And then the costs. There will be necessary tax increases and upfront costs in order to try to implement something like Senate Bill 5204. And finally, we need all advocates who share this same goal of universal health care for all to coalesce around one idea, one piece of legislation, so that we can all be pulling in the same direction. And then finally, as I've also shared with you in the past, we need approval federally to move forward with any type of single payer system. And while I'm very hopeful about the future with the new incoming administration, we are going to need to collaborate and work together as we continue to advance this discussion, so we can ensure that we're successful. So I'm very much looking forward to working together with each and every one of you who support this goal to continue to answer those hard questions and continue to make progress each and every legislative session toward that long-term vision.
All right, thank you. And now we're going with this is very exciting. It is a live question. So here we go from Carrie. And she's asking, shouldn't the legislature pass a gun ban for the city and the Capitol grounds in light of the recent dangers? I think it helped that Washington, D.C. had gun bans. A democracy requires that our Capitol and our legislature should be open to all and that we talk out our differences.
Yes, thank you, Carrie, for that question. As we all watched the horrific scene at the Capitol, the nation's capital, this January, it became very clear that what many of us have known for a long time, that people who have the interest in disrupting the operations of government using intimidation is something that really has come to be the top priority of our security staff and our leaderships in both the House and the Senate as we prepared for the start of this session. You may have seen the National Guard was present for our opening day ceremonies in Olympia because of serious threats to the Capitol. We were safely able to conduct the business and adopt rules that allow us to operate from home in a safe from COVID and safe from intimidation manner. Both chambers, the House and the Senate, are working to pass legislation that would outlaw the intimidation that comes with the intent of some people who are showing up with their weapons. As a person who supports the Second Amendment right, I do not appreciate or welcome intimidation that comes along with that right, and that is where those rights impede on the rights of others to peacefully participate in their government. And so you will see legislation proposed this year that both the House and the Senate are debating, and in addition to that, other policies with an effort to encourage gun responsibility, and with that, high capacity limitations and assault rifles. So some of the bills that you've seen in the past will continue to be debated this year, but in particular, the intimidation that we have seen will be unwelcome, both at the Capitol building and, yes, across the state, should we be successful in passing that legislation this year. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, next we have a question from Alan, and this was in response to the survey. Remember, I told you that there were 3 ways to get your questions in: the survey, the comment section here, and email. Okay, so Alan is asking, what is the state doing to ensure police and sheriff accountability?
Well, I could get started on that, and I know Monica is equally involved. We have more members of color in our caucus than have ever been there, and their communities expect them to lead. And so we have a whole menu, a whole suite of issues that are being addressed. Those bills are moving well through the process, and our members of color are the prime sponsors, and I have signed on to those, and I am supporting those. They deal with police training. They deal with a number of issues, including deadly force, and some of the legal issues as well. Monica probably can add a lot to this discussion, but this is one of our big goals in this session, is to deal with this issue, because the state runs the police academy, and we have that are going to certify police and keep track of who the bad actors are. We've got a lot of people that are very dedicated to public service that are in that space, and we need to be sure that we make sure that our citizens and those folks are safe. So that's just one of the areas where we're dealing with it by taking a multi-pronged approach. And a lot of the bills have been worked on for a long time by people that have experienced firsthand the problem.
Yes, and I would just add to that this is an example of the House and Senate working in tandem. We have had members from both the House and the Senate working together to define a suite of bills and to be judicious with time, since time is very precious and things are moving slowly in a remote session. The Senate has identified bills that they will lead on, and the House has identified bills that we will lead on. And so I think this is just a really good example of both chambers recognizing that this is a front and center issue that we must act on right away. And we found the most efficient way to do that was to share the work and push it forward. So I think you'll see key policies coming from both the House and the Senate, including reevaluating police tactics, independent investigations, and data that is collected in certain cases so that we can make smart decisions. As Representative Wylie mentioned, we also have some bills related to whether or not we can more closely look at the reinstating of police officers after they've demonstrated that they are probably not equipped to do so. So this is a team effort to respond in this way.
Okay, thank you. Next is another question from email from Ken. What are you doing for high school seniors? Graduating late would be a blow to their future plans.
I have a bill that will allow students to participate in the graduation process with an additional pathway. We'll see how successful that is. There's a lot of debate around it right now, but the number one thing we are doing is extending the emergency waiver that we passed on the very last day of session last year, knowing that our seniors are graduating seniors. And this year, my son is a graduating senior. So I know the challenges that they are facing and the anxiety that comes with the uncertainty. So we are extending that waiver this year so that when the school district says, if a student is ready to graduate and they were not able to take the SAT, and that was going to be a requirement for that particular student, and they were not able to access some other element of their requirements because of COVID, that could be waived for this year. So we will be doing what we can to keep our seniors front and center so that we can congratulate them on the other side of graduation day.
Okay. Next, we have a question that was also submitted ahead of time. Can we expect a more robust and science-based effort to address the pandemic with the new administration in the White House?
I am happy to begin by answering the question and saying yes. And it is great, gives me great hope, frankly, to see the very swift actions that the new White House administration is taking. Just yesterday, I'm losing track of the days because they all meld together, but I believe it was within the last several days, President Biden released a 7-point COVID plan, and aspects of that plan include, first and foremost, the development of a national plan for the first time to lead with science, to ramp up testing and the contact tracing that we need, to support our healthcare workers, to launch a COVID-19 vaccine campaign and stand up federal vaccine clinics, to focus on equity and really restore global health leadership by the United States. So I am feeling very hopeful about the future and very grateful to have a federal partner who is going to be there to help ensure that we have what we need to better respond.
Okay. Hey, we have another live question. Here we go. Do you support clean fuel standards, specifically House Bill 1091?
I am a supporter of House Bill 1091. I'm looking at the on the sponsorship list here. I think I was on this bill last time and somehow must have missed it today, but I'll be working to support it on the House side. We know that the climate crisis that we are facing has been described many times as the existential crisis of our time. And any of us who know that the next generation following is a little bit grumpy at the previous generations for leaving such a challenge, we should all take up some responsibility, take some action here. And I think we've all been very supportive of doing that. So I'm proud to support that policy. You might notice that there are a couple of other policies and proposals floating around the legislature this year. And I think that makes it a much more robust conversation, putting more ideas on the table and giving more people an opportunity to weigh in on what they think we should be doing. But I will just say that the legislature on the House side, and I believe the Senate goals aligned, we saw a tweet from President Biden talking about his 4 goals that were exactly what we lined out for Washington State. So with the climate crisis at the top of the list for many of us, it also made the very short list for the president. And I was pretty pleased to see that once again, Washington State will be leading on this issue.
I've supported this before and I support it now. In addition, our transportation package has a very robust carbon fee, and we found that the carbon fee gives us money to invest in electrical infrastructure so that we can make the move to cleaner transportation. Transportation is the area where we have the most to do and have done the least. And so this is a space where there's going to be a lot of attention paid to it, and I'm very optimistic that that's going to have support. In our 90 conversations around the state, I was surprised at how much support there was for taking a carbon fee and investing in cleaner infrastructure.
All right. Next, we have an email question from Tyler. Is there anything you can do about the lack of childcare? It's hard for working dads like me to actually work without it. There you go.
The lack of childcare has been a legislative priority item on just about every legislative agenda we have seen this year. That includes our business community that knows that their workers can't come to work if they don't have childcare. It includes the working parents just like you who recognize that if they're trying to make ends meet in ways that are unpredictable because the schedules are getting moved around for a number of reasons, that it's really hard to try and make that happen with a lack of childcare. We were in a childcare desert and a lack of childcare before the pandemic, and this has absolutely worsened the condition. We have a Fair Start for Kids Act that we are considering this legislative session. Again, a nice, strong partnership between the House and the Senate to identify how we can ensure more families have childcare slots that are predictable and affordable, because affordable has been a real challenge as well. So there's a comprehensive effort in that bill to not only bolster the existing programs that we had in place in Washington State before the pandemic, but to look forward to ensure that our workforce is strong because kids have a place to go and families are secure all around. So if you keep an eye out for the Fair Start for Kids Act, you will see some, I think there's a hearing this week, so you'll see some action on that soon.
Okay, hey, we are at about the halfway mark here, and nobody's lost internet connection. That's so good. All right. A question that came over survey for Senator Cleveland. What has the legislature done in recent years on Democrats' priority healthcare goals?
That's a big question. I'll try to answer it succinctly. As you well know, since the passage of healthcare reform at the federal level in 2010, and even prior to that, our state has been very much engaged in healthcare transformation and working to spur innovation and bring down costs. Our focuses have been and continue to be expansion of coverage, expansion of access, and affordability, more affordable healthcare. As you know, the focus over the course of the last decade has been very much on implementing insurance reforms and delivery system reform, and really moving from a system of sick care, which is what we have today, to one of more wellness and prevention. And now that we have at the federal level an administration who also supports those goals, once again, I'm feeling very positive that we're going to continue to be able to make progress and continue to march toward those goals that I know we all share. Fully recognize that our healthcare system is continuing to be very difficult and very challenging, and we have to make progress in addressing those challenges.
Okay, hey, guess what? We have another live question, this time from Sharon. And Sharon is asking, do you support ranked choice voting, specifically House Bill 1156?
This Sharon says yes. I've supported it before, and it's when I believe it's only a matter of time before we allow local jurisdictions to get used to it. And if it works and people understand it, I see that there's a future for it. But people are going to have to get comfortable with it, and they can do that at the local level. I'm also looking at some of the other states that are, frankly, a little bit ahead of us on that one.
I've been a sponsor of this bill in the past. I continue to support it, and hats off to the advocates in our community that have educated us on the benefits of such a measure. So thank you to you out on the other side of the screen.
And we have an email question from Linda. I read that there are faucets in our schools that have lead contamination. What are we doing to fix this problem?
Thank you. There's a bill from Representative Jerry Paulette, who is a professor at University of Washington in public health. And so I believe it's public health, but he is working to pass a bill that he has had for several years to force districts to create an action plan for how they will work to get the lead removed from water that students drink and that educators drink. It is a lofty goal and it is complex. It's hard to know where the lead is actually coming from. But this is a bill that we will continue to work on. In fact, if I had my education committee agenda before me, I could give you the bill number because we heard it today, and there were a lot of testimony talking about how important it was to make sure that everybody in this country has access to clean drinking water, but particularly our kids in schools that should not be worrying about whether or not they are ingesting lead in the most formative years of their lives.
Okay, we have another email question from Darlene. And Darlene is asking, what are we doing to make sure our kids haven't lost too much ground in their learning when we return to in-person school?
So there's a lot of interest in how we're going to get kids back to school. I have to say, there are a lot of parents that I have talked to who have recently said they have newfound appreciation for the teachers when they're working to try and keep their kids engaged at home and on focus. And our educators have been working hard to reach out to students in a distance environment, but we know there are so many that we are not reaching. The bills that we just heard in appropriations today, where we will be sending federal relief dollars to schools, ask districts to focus on what we need to be doing down the road as well for learning loss. And should we decide to deploy more funds from the state level, we're going to really want to focus on how we can help students make up ground. So there's another full court press on this in the House and the Senate collectively.
Okay, we have another survey question from Adam. How much of our transportation budget will go to relieving traffic congestion?
I would have to get back to you on the exact amount, and that's not been determined because we don't have the final bill yet. I know that every area has their own priorities, and what we do when we do a transportation package is make sure that the local communities can set their own priorities and that they have that we share resources with them to maintain and preserve their existing roads and to address the congestion issues. For instance, there was a project out in Kamas-Washougal that was a very expensive bridge, and because resources have been scarce and people have found that a roundabout can keep traffic moving at less cost, that community decided they would rather have the roundabout than wait longer for a more expensive bridge over Highway 14. So that's a complicated question. Be happy to talk more at length on that one. But we are looking at that and trying to make sure that we have a balanced system where freight can move, where people can use public transportation. We have an aging population that may not want to drive forever. And we have people that live in urban areas and don't make a lot of money, and owning a car isn't a smart way for them to go, and that's not what they want. We have young people who are saying we don't want to be car dependent. So every community does a lot of planning, and we interact with those communities to make sure that there's a range of grants, revenue streams, and partnerships so that we can address that. It's not easy. We have so many more cars and people than we had when most of our infrastructure was built during the 50s.
Okay, thank you. Also, we looked it up, and the bill for lead in water, House Bill 1139, for anybody interested. Okay, so we have another question that came in through the survey from Amy. Would you be willing to support a bill that covers medical expenses for victims of serious physical abuse? Currently, providers are not reimbursed for this expense, and caretakers are being charged for this critical medical care.
Yes, thank you for that question. And the answer is absolutely. This is an issue I've long worked on, and was able to make progress and pass a bill that did temporarily pay for those exams or allow for insurance reimbursement, but doesn't make that permanent. And that's something I'm absolutely willing to continue to work on, and hope that you'll be supportive of that effort.
Okay, hey, guess what? Another live question. This one is from David. Do you want to sponsor legislation for our state to also sell online voter information and pamphlets?
I will just say right away, David, all three of our offices have heard from you. I've asked my legislative assistant to get connected with Representative Wylie's and Senator Cleveland's office to make sure that we respond to your interest and in us sponsoring legislation. I certainly can support your ask. I know that you have also done a lot of work to help make sure that we understand that when you put light-colored text on light-colored bands on TV as a way to try and make sure everybody can see, that is not an inclusive practice. I know you've reached out to our Secretary of State to talk about the voters pamphlet and improvements that can be made. We are following your advocacy very closely. Appreciate your communication with us. And I have to say, we had some testimony in the Committee in Education today with ASL and lots of interpreter services necessary in order to reach out to everyone in our state and to include everyone in their ability to participate in the hearing that we had today with regard to language access. So we are getting better about that, and I'm happy to look at that legislation along with you and partner with my seatmates here to see what we can do. We are the home of the state school for the deaf and for the blind. So we have a responsibility to lead on this issue, in my opinion, and we are really lucky to have you showing us the way.
And David, I just want to also add that I am very grateful for you putting forward this suggestion. And I saw your email to my office this afternoon before I began the town hall tonight, and I did respond to your email and shared with you that I'm absolutely willing to sponsor that bill and looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
And David, I've learned so much from you. If it weren't for your advocacy, I don't think the 49th District legislative team would have had interpreters at their town hall like we have had for the last few years. And we do need to do better. We need to do more. Realistically, we are being told that there are fewer bills that can be done and written and passed this year in this crisis, and because everything's taking longer. So I don't know exactly what we're going to be getting done this year, but I don't think we'll stop. I think we're going to be in there for the long haul, and you've helped us get to that place where we won't give up.
All right. Hey, another live question.
Okay, we can hear you now, Lilia.
You couldn't hear me earlier? Oh.
Yeah, we lost your sound for just a moment there, Lil.
Oh, okay. We have another live question, and it is, how will the carbon tax impact state income?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How will the carbon tax impact state income? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what that question means, but let me take a shot at it. One of the issues with the carbon tax is that of equity. In our conversations about transportation, we dug deep within every conversation on past inequities and how frontline communities have been impacted by past transportation decisions. Minority communities are often experiencing greater levels of air pollution and haven't enjoyed access to our transportation system. And so we're trying to correct that as we move forward. The cost of raising the price on carbon and gasoline, for that matter, is a popular and easiest way to raise money for our transportation. We're trying not to go back to the license plate and to increase that, not rely on that in the future. But we are looking at the equity pieces of that. I'm looking at an additional sales tax for registering an electric car. We have a low-income tax credit mechanism on the books that's never been funded. Yeah. And more of us are talking about making a path to get that done. And I could imagine that that there could be an additional credit for purchasing an electric car of not an extremely high amount for people that are lower income. They would enjoy the a benefit when they purchase the car, and then the benefit of a cheaper operation over the long haul. So we're looking at a variety of ways of making that work. I will say that the price of gas at the pump almost never has anything to do with what the tax is. It has to do with the world price of oil and the market manipulations that go on a global scale. The taxes that we pay to make sure we have safe roads to drive on are not reflected usually in the price at the pump. And so we have to look at the whole picture, and we have to pay attention to the disparate impact on people that can afford less than people that can afford more. I'm not interested in providing huge benefit to people that don't need them.
Okay, so it looks like we're going to be taking our last question, because then we have to go to closing remarks. And it is a live question. What bills are being considered to make housing more affordable, and will the eviction moratorium be continued?
Well, I'll start with a bill that I am supporting, House Bill 1236 by Representative Macri. This is a bill that requires a good cause for eviction, which is one of the concerns that was that the governor's proclamation attempted to address. We know that families with younger children in particular, single parents in particular, and community members of color are among the most frequently evicted on the shortest notice. So if I'm thinking about who is most challenged in this particular time and over time, I'm thinking that these are families that are evicted from their homes, which means they don't have access to broadband where they can get school done, as it turns out is necessary now, but also be able to communicate with healthcare providers and making sure that appointments are made. So if you don't have a home, you are most likely impacted in all of the other areas that we are also trying to address. So I consider this bill a bang for your buck. If we can keep people housed and give people time to recovery in the economy, but also provide the landlords and the tenants a balanced level of support in this very crucial time, I think we will find that many of the other problems we would see down the road will be somewhat mitigated. So I think this is an all efforts kind of policy that we really need to consider this year, and I'm looking forward to supporting that. I was asked to prioritize a bill in our Members of Color Caucus, and oftentimes people promote one of their own bills. I chose to promote Representative Macri's bill because I think it absolutely addresses the equity across the board and across all committees that we're working on in the legislature. So that will be my commitment this year.
And Monica, I totally agree. And you touched on an issue that I think is really important. The landlords are going to push back and are pushing back because the moratorium and the lack of their ability to pay their mortgages is going to create a backlash, in my opinion. And so we need to treat the small businesses and the small landholders um, as well as we treat other businesses, so that they are not feeling like they have to push back on the tenants. And that way we can continue to provide tenant relief, as well as invest in affordable housing of a wide variety of types going forward. And that's why we need to make sure that the Housing Trust Fund remains robust and that we make it as creative and accessible as possible, because we need to tackle this problem at all levels.
Okay, so we are going to closing remarks in just 1 second. I just want to remind everybody who is online, watching and listening, that if we did not get to your question, please be sure to email your lawmakers. It's easy. It's first name dot last name at leg.wa.gov. And all three of these ladies also have official Facebook pages that you can visit often. So we're going to start with closing remarks, starting with the senator.
Thank you. Well, I want to share my appreciation again for each and every one of you who are participating tonight and have joined us. I have been hard at work in attempting to address the most emergent challenges that we face currently, and working to also address the biggest challenges we face right here at home. And as Representative Wylie indicated, we've continued our hard work to address one of our biggest needs, which is to replace the aging Interstate 5 bridge. And so know that I'm continuing to support those efforts and help advance those efforts. Also very focused on, as a part of that, in helping to move forward on investment that our state can make that will help to also spur economic recovery, will help to create jobs, will help to get people back to work. I'm supporting a transportation revenue package that Senator Hobbs in the Senate has put forward the last 3 years, and looking forward to continuing to work with him and my colleagues in advancing that effort, and hopefully helping to address our need by funding a new I-5 bridge replacement in that package. Also feel strongly that we have to make investments in broadband and in public works. And so know that I'm continuing to be an advocate for that. And just want to finally share that as chair of the Senate Healthcare Committee, continue to be focused on COVID response, and understand that the shortest route to recovery for our state and our nation is to get the virus under control. And that is where immense amount of time and effort and focus is going into right now. And I am reminded of something that Dr. Aaron Kratz, who presented to the Senate Health and Long-Term Care Committee, who's an expert on pandemics, shared. And what he said was, no one is safe until everyone is safe. And that's what we're working to accomplish. And thank you again for being here tonight.
I guess I'm next, if we're going in order of longevity here and status here. I have to say that a lot of us, both in the legislature and outside, are antsy and eager to be back in contact with people. We're grumpy some of the time, and we feel isolated. I have to say that this opportunity to hear from people, even though the questions are hard and we don't have all the answers sometimes, has really lifted me up and will help me have the energy to keep working virtually for the district and for the state. It's a huge honor to be able to do this work, and I look forward to being able to have a real town hall where I can look people in the eye and shake their hands again.
Same. I think we're all looking forward to when we can get back to business as usual, but I will just highlight a couple of things we might continue doing that we've learned to do in this pandemic, and that is to connect to people far away, whether it's Thanksgiving Zoom Jeopardy game, which is what we did at the Stonier household with family far away and even in other states. That was not something we would normally be able to do, but remote testimony is something we may continue. Making sure that we can communicate with our constituents using technology rather than only communicating with those that come to session is a lesson that I think we learned very dearly this session and that we will continue to do. So I think we're going to see some of the challenges hard to overcome, but there will be some lessons learned that I think makes government and your elected officials more accessible, and that is a good outcome. We will continue to stay focused on the priorities that not only you set forward for us, but that we are learning from other parts of the state, our needs across the state. We are fortunate to represent the 49th Legislative District in Southwest Washington, which is a leader in a number of things like Career Connect learning, like childcare, innovative local childcare concepts. And we're going to take that forward to Olympia and continue to share the good work that you all do at the state level so we can duplicate that where it makes sense. My heart and good wishes go out to those who are continuing to suffer in this really hard time. Additionally, those who may have lost a loved one either because of COVID or experienced losing a family member or a friend and not being able to be close to them at that time. So having experienced a bit of that in my family, I really feel that it's important for us to offer each other grace at a time when there's a lot of challenges going on inside family walls. So my heart goes out to all of you. I'm very hopeful about what we can accomplish this session, and very excited about the feedback we'll be getting from those questions that we didn't get to tonight, but we'll be our fantastic staff behind the scenes are collecting those for us. And I know I speak for all three of us when I say a sincere thank you to the staff who's running this town hall for us tonight so we could be in communication with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
You are very welcome. And folks, for those of you who joined us this evening, thank you so much. We hope that this was helpful, and we apologize for the little bumps at the beginning, but this is what's happening this time. So see you next time.